Hi everyone, welcome back to the Dog Classroom podcast. My name is Amelia, and today I have with me a special guest. This is Kady.
Hi, so I'm Kady, and I'm a Dog Classroom regular.
Yeah, lifer.
We will be lifers. Gus is going to be a lifer.
But there is a secondary reason that you're here today.
Other than that, yes. So I'm here today to talk about your pets and wills and estates. So first, a little background on me. So I've got two dogs at home. So we have Gus, who's down here chewing on his bully stick. And then I have a little old lady at home named Juno, who's a husky cross. And I've been going to the dog classroom with Gus since I think it was 2020. It was during the pandemic because we all had to wear masks when I first started coming to the dog classroom.
It's been probably 5 years.
So it's been at least 5 years, which would make sense because Gus is going to be 6 in January. But we started with beginning and basics and went all the way through, and now we're doing competitive agility. So that's my night gig. And then in the daytime, I'm a lawyer, and the main areas of practice that I do are real estate and wills and estates. So since both of those areas actually pets are becoming more and more important. So
That's true.
In real estate, I've got so many clients who are buying houses and they're thinking about their pets.
Okay, new episode idea.
This one, we're just going to talk briefly about this one, but we could expand more on it later. But I've got people who buy houses with bigger backyards for their dogs. They're buying houses, or they're selling houses because they didn't fit their dog. I had one client who sold her house, bought a condo, and then 2 months later sold her condo. And I said, "What's going on?" And she's like, "My dog hated living in the condo."
That's fair.
So she then bought another house so that her dog could have a backyard.
I love that.
So people are buying houses. They want big backyards. They want fully fenced backyards. And I was like, I am one of these people. We bought our house because
second house for my dog. So
yeah, right. And so we bought our second house with a fully fenced backyard because I was like, oh, we got 2 dogs now. I want them to be able to go outside and just roam around and have their own space. And so we're not the only ones. People are doing this all the time. They're thinking about their pets first. But then what they don't think about when it comes to their pets is they don't think about what's going to happen to their pets when they pass away. Yeah. And we don't like to think about what's going to happen when we die. It's not a really happy topic, but we're doing all these things for our pets, and our pets are so important to us, but then we don't think about planning for them. And
sorry, I'm interrupting you a little bit, but when we first had this idea, I posted on our social media on the stories or whatever, and I was like, do you have a will, and does it include your pet? And I got probably a good dozen responses that were like, should I? And
you should.
I was like, I think so, yeah. So we're going to talk about it. But most people either didn't have a will at all, or if they did, it didn't include their pet. So.
Yeah, so statistics-wise, I'm not surprised. I think the last number that I heard, it was 50% of Canadians over the age of 18 don't have a will, which is bad. So for more reasons than just your pets. But today we're focusing on the pets. So 50, I don't know where I got this stat from, but I found it online. So 50% of millennials, of which I am one, love their pets more than they love their siblings. Or they say they love their pets more than they love their siblings. Sis. So maybe don't tell your siblings about that. But what it also means, though, is that there are babies, right? These are my fur children. And when you have actual human children, you have to plan for them in your will, but then you also need to plan for your fur children. So you'd sent me, I think it was an Instagram reel, it's about Diane Keaton.
Yeah, she left her dog $5 million or something like that?
Yeah, so her dog Reggie, so it was unclear whether she left the dog $5 million or whether she left that to take care of the dog. And I did some research after that and I couldn't quite figure it out. And I don't know that anybody really knows that yet because it was pretty recent, but the difference is important, whether or not she left it to the dog or to take care of the dog, which we're going to get to. But there's also another super famous one, which is Karl Lagerfeld of Chanel.
His cat.
Yeah, Choupette got a substantial amount of money in a trust to live out her days.
Didn't she get a house where the staff were taking care of her? Yeah, so that was elaborate.
I mean, when you have that much money,
why not?
Why not?
Right? Yeah, I think that was she got a house, she got a staff for certain things.
There was a caregiver, she had a full-time caregiver who's, I mean, I would do that job in a heartbeat. Sign me up. But yeah, she got a house, and there was a substantial amount of money with like a full staff to take care of her. And she basically just like lived out, I don't know if she's still alive, but she like lived out the rest of her days in this ginormous mansion with all these people who just waited on her hand and foot, which sounds like a really great life.
Yeah.
So in Ontario, pets are considered property, which is upsetting.
It is, because like obviously there's more to it than like, okay, you have like a bicycle.
Yes.
And then you have like a cat or a dog.
Like not the same.
Not the same.
But unfortunately, so in Ontario, that's still how the law treats them. But that's kind of changing a little bit. But and as it should, right? Because pets are much different than like a couch or a car or a bicycle or money. Like,
right.
You can fight over all of that stuff when someone dies or when you're splitting up with your spouse, but pets aren't just the same thing as like an inanimate object.
Yeah, and if you're going to get to this, you can tell me. But we had talked about like the best interest of the dog. Like you don't have the best interest of your couch, you have the best interest of your kids or your pets.
And so Ontario law is kind of slowly moving in that direction. British Columbia is fully there. So they've enacted legislation fairly recently, which is now taking into consideration the best interest of the pet or the animal or whatever the case may be. But Ontario's not quite there yet, but we're kind of moving in that direction. And I think, especially based on the fact that millennials care more about their pets than their siblings, we're gonna get there at some point. So the system that we currently have just doesn't really take into consideration like the bond that you have with your animals. Like if someone came and took my couch, I would not be sad. Like I wouldn't be really very upset about it.
Yeah.
But if something ever happened to one of my dogs, I'd be devastated. Like those are my babies. And so it doesn't really take into consideration that actual bond that we have with our animals. Like they're, for all intents and purposes, like these are my children.
Right.
So Ontario law really focuses on like who owns the animal, which also isn't really easy to determine in a lot of cases.
Yeah, because what if, I mean, this is a little bit family law, but in cases of like divorce and stuff, that's a thing. Like who owns the dog?
And same thing in estates, like, because your dogs are property or your cats are property. And so who owned it? Was it, if you and I are living our happy little lives there and we've got a dog, well, is it my dog or your dog? Or is it our dog? How do you determine that? And it's really not that easy. Like houses, there's a title, there's a deed. Cars, there's an ownership. Boats have ownerships. I mean, couches don't really have that kind of stuff, but it's usually a lot easier to determine who bought a couch, right? Yeah. It's like, I put that on my credit card 5 years ago or whatever. But who bought the dog, who adopted the dog. There's not usually like a record of it the same way that there is when you buy something else like a car or a house.
Yeah, when somebody buys it and then who takes care of it.
Yes, so it's because that's not the only thing, right? If I buy the dog, but my spouse is the one who cares for it and he's the one who takes it for walks and feeds it and does this, that, and the other thing. Is it my dog or is it his dog? It's like ownership is not easy to determine because sometimes there's a license or, who takes it to the vet? What does the vet say?
Yeah.
Right. So like, for example, like us with Gus and Juno. So when we, my husband and I got married and we kind of were amalgamating everything, both dogs ended up at the vet under me, but he had Juno prior to us ever meeting. So she's not really my dog. She kind of is now, but like maybe she is. So it's not that easy to determine. So, who's the dog microchipped to? Me, you, someone else. Sometimes depending on where the dog came from, like maybe it has a microchip, maybe there's a person registered to it, maybe there isn't. So that's not that easy. But really what it comes down to is that our pets are, for lack of a better option, they're considered property. So what that means is that we get to decide what happens to them when we die, the same way that we get to decide what happens to the rest of our assets when we die. So you get to decide where your car goes when you die, or your house, or your money, your bank accounts, your investments. You get to decide that. And so you also get to decide what happens to your pets. And based on the bond that we have with our pets, it's something that you should care about and that you should consider when you're making a will. And I mean, pets don't live as long as us, and so it's something that you need to update from time to time, but you should update your will from time to time anyways, as your life changes.
That's a question. Like, could you do you specify like per, like, okay, I want Stark to have this, blah, 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 or could I say like any pet under my ownership?
You can do both,
Okay.
or either or, depending on your circumstances, right? Like some of it will depend on how old the animal is, right? Like if you've got a brand new puppy who's probably going to be around for maybe 15 years or 10 years or however long the like life expectancy is, that might be something that you want to consider. But if your pet is older and you're like, well, I'm probably going to live longer than this, you know, this dog is going to probably pass in the near future, you could be more specific. Or if you're just like, I don't want to change my will every time I get a new animal, you could be just more broad and say any pets that I have are going to go to this person or that person.
Right.
Now, having a will, or I'll backtrack, I guess, not having a will is called dying intestate. So when you die intestate with no will, no one has any authority to deal with your property, including your pets. So no one has any legal authority to do anything. And that's sometimes where it gets really messy. And then also just from the pet's perspective, I think it's also super stressful because
not knowing
where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Are they bounced around from like this person to that person? Someone's just trying to find a place for them to go. Do they have a person to go to? Are you surrendering them to, you know, the Humane Society or the rescue? Where are they going? Like that's pretty stressful for them. And especially in a situation where they're like, their mom or dad just passed away and they're like, where did that person go? Why aren't they here with me anymore? Like Gus is my little shadow. He follows me everywhere. Like if I went missing all of a sudden, he would be really upset.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have a will, no one has any authority to deal with your stuff. It's more traumatic for the animal, I think, because they don't know what's going to happen, where they're going to go. It's like similar to having kids.
Yeah.
And so that's another one of the reasons why it's really important that you have a will, because now you get to choose and decide what happens to your pets, right? So what's going to happen to, you know, who's going to have Stark or Nuggy or Gus or Juno, like where are your pets going? And then it also gives you the opportunity to choose the person who you want that pet to go to.
Right.
Right? So, you know, you also have to think about them, right? Like Gus, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, but like Gus is reactive to other dogs. He doesn't like other dogs. Right. So in terms of, you know, if something was going to happen to me, who's going to take care of Gus? Like he's not going to do well in a household with other dogs that he doesn't know. He loves his sister more than anything, but he's not going to do well in a household with another dog.
Right.
So that's also a consideration, right? When you're thinking about who's going to take these pets if something were to happen to you. And that gives you the opportunity to have a discussion with them.
Yeah.
And ask them if they want to.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't want to surprise them, and then they say, no, I don't want that responsibility.
Yeah, and then you're gone. And so now your dog is, or cat or pet is also now just, again, left in limbo. And your state trustee or executor is going to try to figure out what to do with them. So anyone who's left anything in a will, whether or not it's a dog or a cat or a house or a lump sum of money, you never have to accept that. And so having those conversations is super important because you get the opportunity while you're still here to say to the person, okay, if something were to happen to me, would you take my dog?
Yeah.
Are you prepared to take my dog? Because not everybody is,
yeah,
right? Or they're not in a situation where they can.
Well, and I've had like clients ask me if, you know, they can put in their will that, not that I take the dog, but that I decide where they go, sort of thing. And I don't know if that's like that I would kind of decide who to rehome it to in that situation.
I mean, you could, but that puts a lot on you.
I mean, if I know the dog really well or whatever, but I'm not in a position to actually take that dog into my home. Like if all my clients did that, I would have, you know,
you would have
full of dogs.
A lot of dogs.
And so like, I guess it was just a discussion about like, I'll leave the dog to you, but like, could you like make sure that he has a good home, sort of thing.
Yeah, and you can do that, right? Like they can just say, okay, Amelia's gonna get my dog, and then she's gonna decide after that where the dog ends up, who takes the dog. I mean, that does put a lot on you, so you have to be prepared to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe in some cases you are, right? And you're like, you know, I know this dog really well, I know the person really well, I'm okay with taking on that responsibility. But you still never have to, right? Like they can decide that, they can put that in your will, but if the time comes and your circumstances have changed, you can say, I'm not prepared to take this on, and you can just decline. So that's why it's so important to talk to the people who are going to be making these decisions.
Yeah.
If you don't specify what's going to happen to your pets and who's going to take your pets and where they're going to go, then your estate trustee or executor is just going to decide. Because usually most wills just contain a clause that says, my executor is going to deal with my personal property. They're going to deal with my stuff.
And that's like, normally like your couch.
Yeah, your couch, the stuff you don't really care too much about. What's going to happen to your old shoes when you're gone? No one really cares that much. They can be donated, they can be thrown out, you can have a yard sale, whatever. But no one really cares what happens to, your old pair of shoes at the end of the day. But you do care what happens to your pets.
Yeah.
Or at least I do.
Most of us do, but you see it a lot it tends to be, I find mostly senior pets because they've lived with a senior human, that human passes away, and then the family is just like, I don't know what to do, and gives it to a rescue or shelter, which maybe that was something they discussed. But also I think in a lot of cases, it's just, they assume, well, the family will take the dog. Right? And then nobody's ready to do that.
And nobody's prepared to do it. And it doesn't have to go to your family. If you've got friends, talk to your friends, if there's someone, I've got tons of friends. When we go to town, sometimes a family member will come watch the dogs when we're gone, or a friend. And it's a matter of just saying, if God forbid something were to happen to me and I still have these pets, would you be willing to take them? And then they can decide yes or no at the time. But if they're going to say no, then you're like, okay, moving on, I will ask someone else.
Right.
Because already. So just leaving it up to your executor is okay, but it's not maybe the greatest option. Whereas you can, if you have the option to choose, I just think that's so much better.
So what can you do?
So what's miles better is you choose the person and you talk to the person and they say yay or nay. And then you also have the opportunity to provide something to this person to take care of the animal in terms of pets cost money, right? They've got to go to the vet. They need shots. They need food. They need dog classroom lessons.
They do.
So, and all these things cost money. It's like everything, right? They need treats, toys. Gus likes to play with an old sock, but some dogs.
Stark has all of his meds and everything.
Yeah.
And, I would need somebody who would keep up on that.
Well, and be able to afford to keep up on that, because that's another thing. And so what you can do is, pets are considered property. So you can't create a trust with your pet as the beneficiary, because then you have property going to property. But what you can do is you can create a trust of, X number of dollars, right? $5,000, $10,000. You can pick an amount of money.
If you're Diane Keaton, you could
be $5 million, or you could leave your pet a house if you're Karl Lagerfeld, right? But those are your options, right? And I mean, not all of us have that, Diane Keaton money, so it's going to be a more realistic amount of money. But you can create a trust, or at least give the person a sum of money on the condition that they're going to take your pet, right? So, if I'm going to die, I'm going to say, well, Amelia, I'm going to leave you $10,000 in my will, and you're going to take care of Gus.
Right.
On the condition that you take care of him. That's usually what most people end up doing is, it's going to be a sum of money, and it's just going to be a gift, because creating a trust has all kinds of income tax implications, and it's a bit more complicated. Maybe that's what Diane Keaton did, because that's a lot more money. That's a lot more money, right? And so what that does is it then alleviates some of those concerns, and it also would, I think, make it a little bit easier for that person to say yes, because they're now going to be like, okay, well, you know what? I don't have to, I have something to draw on. Maybe I need to fence my backyard, right? Because if now I'm going to have a dog, maybe I need to fence my backyard. So then there's, an amount of money that can be used to do that.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not all of a sudden now going to have this added expense that I wasn't really expecting to, I've got to buy food for the dog and treats and take them to the vet and all that kind of stuff. Right. So it's now no longer a financial burden on this person. Right. Because when I go out and get a dog or I get a pet, I'm deciding that I'm okay with taking that burden on. Right. I'm not, maybe burden is the wrong word, but
that responsibility.
Yeah, I've accepted that responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. So you can take that on and you can say, you know what, this is the X number of dollars that I think is going to be sufficient to take care of them from now until the time that they pass away. And here you go. Thank you so much for taking care of my pet. It's also very important that you again, talk to the person, because we're talking kind of more about cats and dogs in this situation, but some people have more unusual animals.
Right. I mean, it's my partner, but we now have snakes.
Yeah.
So
actually, that's funny that you mentioned that, because that was one of my unusual pets on my list here.
Because who wants to take a snake?
Yeah, right? But that's a great question, right? They're not your standard animal.
Right.
Or if you have, chickens or goats, or you have a little hobby farm of some kind, or horses, or birds. Birds, or turtles or tortoises, because those can live, I think parrots can live to be 80 some odd years old.
Yeah.
And tortoises can live to be 150. So planning for that is super important, because unlike dogs and cats, those animals are definitely outliving us.
Yeah.
If you get a tortoise, that thing is definitely living longer than you.
Yeah. So in that case, you would have to have some kind of
You're
plan.
gonna want to have a plan, because otherwise, what's gonna happen to your tortoise when you're
tortoise
gone?
can't really go to the Humane Society.
No. Well, I mean,
Would they euthanize the tortoise?
I don't know. I think your executor would have a hard time finding someone to take this tortoise.
Yeah.
But I think that probably what they would do is you see them, and I mean, you see it on Facebook, right? You see people are I'm looking for a home for this animal. Their owner passed away. And I mean, I guess that's the beauty of social media now, is that there's more of a reach, and you can find someone. But maybe that's probably not the person that, the owner would have chosen.
Yeah.
But it's someone who's willing to take it, and you're all right, there's depending on the situation, there may not be any other options.
Yeah, you don't have as much choice if they didn't say I'm leaving my tortoise to whatever tortoise rescue or something.
And I mean, but right, because those are different, more unusual animals, and there may not be a rescue available, maybe not in the area that you're in, and then it may be more difficult or take longer to find someone to take on that animal after the fact. So also super important.
Yeah.
So the law is changing. So British Columbia enacted legislation. It was more or less in the context of divorce, but similar principles apply upon death, is that they are now considering the best interest of the animal rather than just pets or property.
Right.
So they're able to look at, who's the best person suited to care for the animal, right? So if you're splitting up with your partner, people like to fight about all kinds of stuff when they're splitting up, or when somebody dies. People love to fight about, I have a really great story about people who are fighting about a rolling pin, but that's for another time.
Wonderful.
And so, right, fighting over that kind of stuff happens all the time. So Ontario isn't quite there, but we are kind of coming along the way. And so there was a recent case in Ontario. It was called, I know you like to read Canley.
I do read Canley.
So you can look it up. It's called Carvalho v. Verma, and it was about a bull terrier named Rocco. So Mr. Carvalho and Miss Verma had some kind of a romantic relationship before he died. Their particular relationship status was kind of unknown at the time that he actually passed away. But Rocco was purchased by Mr. Carvalho. It was in early 2022, and then he died in November of 2022. He had two sisters, and he left his whole estate to his two sisters. But the day after he passed away, his girlfriend, partner, maybe, we're not sure, she came to the house and took the dog. She said he gave it to me as a gift.
I might have read about this on Facebook, though. I think I've seen her Facebook post.
You might have, because it was pretty recent. The decision came out in late 2024, so it's a pretty recent case. But traditionally, the courts treat pets like property, but that's kind of changing. So what the sisters did was the sisters started a court application. They said, I want the dog back. And so the court looked at two things, and they said, okay, well, traditionally we've always dealt pets as property. But in 2021, there was another court case in Ontario, Coates v. Dixon, and the court started to take into consideration other factors other than just purely ownership of the dog. They looked at who cared for the dog, who paid for the dog's expenses, and was there any other agreements between the people about the ownership of the dog, right? Okay. Because if we're purchasing a dog or we're adopting a pet together, what is the agreement? And people do it all the time, right? It's you get a dog for Christmas. Mm-hmm. Well, whose dog is it? Was it a gift? Who purchased the pet, right? So in this particular case, in Carvalho and Verma, the court found that either way, Rocco legally belonged to the deceased when he passed away. he was the one who cared for the animal, lived with him. He's the one who took him for walks, fed him, paid all his expenses. So the court said in that case, either way you look at it, he was the owner of the dog at the time of death. And so the dog forms part of his estate. You got to give the dog back to the sisters. She's since appealed. I don't know what happened after that, but really what we're gonna go with for a takeaway here is you get a will.
Get a will, and things are changing, so maybe we can update.
Yeah, but like get a will. Like we have the ability to choose like what happens to our pets when we pass away, and we should take advantage of that. Like it's the best way to protect your assets, number one, but also your family, like your human family and your fur family, because we want to make sure that, you know, that someone's taking care of Gus.
Who's going to buy him his bully sticks?
I know. He loves the extra large bully sticks. Like those aren't cheap. So
well, this is super informative. I learned a lot of things, and hopefully your audience learned a lot of things.
Yeah, and so it's something you should talk to your lawyer about. Whether it's you know, you can come see me. That's a major area of my practice, or any other lawyer that you deal with.
We'll put your contact info in the thing.
Yeah, like something you should deal with your pets. They're super important. They're super important to me. Like my pets are super important to me, and I know everyone, right? They like them better than their siblings. So plan for it.
Plan ahead.
Plan ahead. Protect them. Make sure that there's someone who's going to take them when you pass away, because it's also going to be less traumatic for your pets at the end of the day too. Like just, you know, property and all that stuff aside, it's doing what's in the best interest of your animals. Because whether the law considers the best interests or not, we should we should be considering the best interests of our pets, right? Who's going to take them? Who's going to care for them? Because if we're not going to be, like, if I'm not going to be here, I want to make sure that he still has a good life.
Yeah.
And he's going to miss me, and he's going to be upset, and I want to make sure that there's someone there who's going to take care of them.
Exactly.
Anybody?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. It's a little different than our normal, but I really liked it. It's very informative. And yeah, we'll do another episode with Kady, and we'll talk all about Mr. Gus here.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You.